All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. What famous film is this iconic line from? Hint, the year is 1950. The location is vintage black and white Hollywood. It is about a aging silent film queen that refuses to accept that her stardom has ended. Sunset Boulevard is one of the most famous movies of all time. It's starring Gloria Swanson and William Holden. It's co-written and directed by Billy Wilder. Sunset Boulevard really is an homage to the silent film era and the larger-than-life stars that made up this scene that really was obliterated almost instantaneously as soon as sound was developed for movies. Almost none of these actors were able to transition from just facial expressions, acting, to talking. Charlie Chaplin was one of the few people that was able to make this transition, and obviously, we all know his name. The shots in this film are absolute perfection. You understand how movies started out being called moving pictures. No shot is lost, intended to move the story along and get you to feel what that actor is going through. Right at the top of the movie, they give away the ending. William Holden's character, Joe Gillis, a struggling screenwriter, has been shot 3 times and he is laying dead in a pool of a movie star's mansion on Sunset Boulevard. You would think, why give away that spoiler at the beginning? It's absolutely brilliant. You're on the edge of your seat the whole time. How does it get this bad? Joe is a struggling writer from Ohio. He moved to Hollywood. He's written a couple of screenplays that did okay. Joe is several months behind on his rent and several months behind on his car payments, and they're about to tow his car. 75 years later, nothing's changed. You're still hearing about the struggling writer who can't pay his rent and his car is getting towed. Joe really doesn't want to be without a car in LA, so he goes to a friend that works in the studios, and this guy explains how he's done a second mortgage on this ranch someone convinced him to buy in the valley. He goes to his agent who's playing golf. I think his agent gives him the best advice. Let him tow your car, so then you'll have nowhere to go and you'll have to sit behind your typewriter and write. Joe's like, no, that's a dumb idea. I'm not gonna do that. I have to have my car. So Joe's driving back home trying to figure out what he's gonna do. And the guys from the finance office see him in the car. So we're on a little chase and Joe turns in to this random abandoned mansion. Max, Norma's butler, sees him right away. Norma peeks her head from behind the blinds. Norma and Max think that Joe is there to bring the coffin and bury their pet monkey that just died. Super creepy. Right from the top, we're like, whoa, he has walked into a whole nother world. Joe confesses, no, he is not there to bury her monkey. He hid his car in the garage. He's actually a writer, and he does recognize Norma as being a has-been movie star. Norma gets this idea, well, I'm planning my big comeback. I've been working on this script, so maybe I'll hire you. Then Joe gets this idea, I could take advantage of this situation and tell her I'm really expensive and I'm gonna charge her all this money to work on her script. So they sort of begin this very toxic relationship together where they're both trying to manipulate each other. There's such a great line by Joe when he starts in trying to fix her script that she's written. Sometimes it's interesting to see just how bad writing can be. This promise to go the limit. Almost immediately, Joe realizes he potentially made a big mistake committing to finishing this script because Norma's standing over his shoulder every 5 seconds, nope, you can't take that scene out. Nope, don't do that. Norma thinks of herself as this ageless movie star everyone wants, and she's lonely. She has Max the butler, but she wants a young, handsome boy toy almost. Norma is so delusional. Not only does she think that she is a movie star and they're working on the screenplay for their big comeback, but she actually thinks that Joe is in love with her and they're in this actual relationship together. So Joe, who is actually pretty immature and cocky, now is treating Norma like a mom or something. So when she goes to bed, he's sneaking out to go work on this script with Betty. which is actually, I think, really good. They've got some really cool ideas and they're back and forth. Norma finds out. She starts calling Betty, who's this just really sweet woman. She genuinely thinks that Joe is this like really solid, honest guy, which he's not. Norma is lavishing Joe with all these presents, really nice clothes, feeling like she needs to entertain him, to keep him in the house. He's getting very spoiled and lying around sort of bored. She's not actually paying him, which is really fascinating because if she actually paid him, which she said she was going to hire him to be a writer to fix her script, if she was actually paying him paychecks, she knew that he would just leave after a couple weeks or a month or two. He'd be able to pay for his car and leave. So she's manipulating him to stay because there's always this caveat. Well, he doesn't actually have the money, but he's getting lavish gifts from her. One night on New Year's Eve, she's pretending, see how entertaining and fun I am? We're gonna have this big New Year's Eve party. I've got all these cool friends. They get all dressed up and he's like, wow, it's getting late. Where's all the guests you said were coming? And she's like, JK, it's just us, thinking, okay, well, now we're gonna start our beautiful love affair. Joe gets fed up. He escapes to a New Year's Eve party with friends his own age, and his friend Betty's there. Norma finds out that Joe has escaped her clutches in her fancy prison, so she slits her wrists. Any human being is going to feel horrible. So Joe drives back there. He feels so bad. They're sort of like trauma bonded. How do you control someone if you don't physically have them tied down, right? You can guilt trip them. You can try and break their spirit. You can tell them, you can threaten them. Joe feels horrible. He's gonna stay with her a little while longer. Norma threatens to do it again. Now they're officially in this really dysfunctional dynamic where they really are like pulling each other down. The whole time Norma Desmond is in this delusional fantasy world, which really doesn't ever end. That's the overarching main theme of this film, is that this movie star just remained delusional about her stardom and her fame, and she actually had enablers around her that kept that delusion going. Really up until the last second, which is the iconic line, her walking down the stairs surrounded by camera guys. All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. Because the butler, Max, we find out, was one of her first husbands and one of the first directors that discovered her. He has stuck around in this house as her butler servant. Max's entire life has become in servitude to this movie star and keeping her in this fantasy cocoon of I'm a star, I'll always be a star. As the movie develops and this relationship gets more and more dysfunctional, Max explains to Joe, I'm the one who's still writing the fan letters. The entire mansion is pictures of Norma. She just wants to watch her own movies. She's still signing her autographs on her headshots. Max is the one who's feeding into Norma's delusion for years and years and years. You could say it's love, or you could say that Max is also manipulating her just as much as Joe did. That's one of the things that Joe says in the voiceover so brilliantly. Norma becomes a recluse in this mansion so that she doesn't have to go outside and see that time has passed. Things have changed. Things aren't what they used to be. The destructive nature of holding on to the past, which I think everyone can relate to, which is so fascinating if you really want to get into the nuances of these messages and these themes. Everyone can relate to that. Holding on to something from the past that doesn't exist anymore, and in your head, you can convince yourself that you're still that person, or you can have enablers around you that are feeding into that narrative. You're still as popular as you were, you're still as loved as you were. No need to change, don't change a thing. No need to make any progress or be challenged in any way or be told the truth in any way. Your delusion is also in service to those around you that are getting something out of it as well. Probably my favorite part of this movie is when Norma decides to take matters into her own hands, and she's gonna get all dressed up, get Max to drive the fancy car, and her and Joe are gonna drive onto the Paramount lot. She is going to get famous director Cecil B. DeMille to direct her comeback and her script that she's written. Cecil B. DeMille was a famous director in the silent film era and beyond. He had a career that spans over 50 years, and he plays himself in the movie. I love the moment when he's like, Norma Desmond's here? He's like, oh, that script was terrible. I don't think Joe was probably that good of a writer, but even so, his hands were tied because Norma's like wasn't gonna let him write what he wanted to write, like fix it the way he wanted to fix it. DeMille was like, that script was really bad. Like, I don't wanna have to tell her that to her face. And there's some young, handsome producers that are around him like, okay, well, let's just blow her off. Cecil B. DeMille is so gracious and loves her and cares about her and was there when she just got her start, and she was huge and she was amazing to work with. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna blow her off. She's had millions of fans blow her off. She deserves my respect. It's a great scene. So Cecil B. DeMille brings her onto the stage where he's shooting his next movie. No one wants to tell her to her face, your career's dead, you're never gonna work again. And really the only person that ever was honest with her was Joe. Fascinating film, so much nuance, so many different aspects of the message and the themes, and how 75 years later, it feels true today in some ways, just the human condition, holding on to the past, having a fantasy in your head that other people are sort of feeding into because they're also getting something out of it, people manipulating and controlling each other, and having to age in a world where you just want everything to stay the same. What did you guys think about Sunset Boulevard? If you haven't seen it recently, go back and watch it, come back, write comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Sunset Boulevard, memories of watching it, and different things it brings up for you.